Tonight, the story will be about the paranormal occurrences experienced by Emily, a young nurse, in a morgue. A morgue, usually built within the hospital area, is a place where dead bodies are temporarily kept. After autopsy examination is completed and the autopsy report is issued, the dead body will be kept there until the family or relatives claim it. Sometimes, when nobody else coming to claim the dead body, the hospital itself will arrange for the burial. In the middle of our city stood St. Vincent's Hospital. Built in the early 1900s by the Christian missionaries, which came along with the British imperialists back then, it was a place where many people were born and many people died. Deep below the hospital was the morgue, a cold, dark place where the dead were kept. The morgue was known for strange events. Doors creaked open by themselves. Cold drafts swept through the room for no reason. Whispers echoed in the dark. Most people thought it was just the old building making noises, but some believed the place was haunted. Emily was a young nurse who worked the night shift. She was brave and kind, always helping where she could. One stormy night, Emily was asked to take an old woman named Mrs. Williams to the morgue. Mrs. Williams had died peacefully in her sleep. Emily wheeled the body down dark, empty halls. The wheels squeaked, echoing in the silence. She felt uneasy. As she walked down the stairs to the basement, the air grew colder. When she reached the morgue, an icy chill greeted her. She quickly placed Mrs. Williams in one of the refrigerated compartments and turned to leave. But as she reached the door, she heard a whisper. It was soft, like a breath, but clear enough to make her stop. Emily turned around, but no one was there. The whisper grew louder, and then she felt a cold hand brush against her arm. Terrified, she ran out of the morgue. The next day, Emily looked pale and scared. Her friends asked what was wrong. She told them about the whisper and the cold hand. To her surprise, some of her co-workers said they had also experienced strange things in the morgue. One doctor claimed he saw a shadowy figure near the cold storage units. Determined to find out what was happening, Emily and a few brave co-workers decided to spend a night in the morgue. They brought cameras and voice recorders. As the night went on, they heard doors slam shut and objects move on their own. The temperature dropped suddenly, making them shiver. The most chilling evidence came when they listened to the recordings. Amidst the static, a clear voice whispered, "Help me." The voice was desperate and sad. Emily felt a strong need to help. She looked through the hospital's old records and found out that Mrs. Williams had lost her daughter, Clara, in a car accident many years ago. Clara had died in the same hospital and had been kept in the same morgue. It seemed Mrs. Williams' spirit had returned to be with her daughter. The haunting of St. Vincent's morgue became a well-known story among the hospital staff. Many were scared, but some were curious. Emily continued to work at the hospital but avoided the morgue. She couldn't forget the cold hand on her arm and the desperate whisper in her ear. Months passed, but the whispers continued. Emily often thought about Mrs. Williams and Clara. She felt connected to their story and wanted to help them find peace. She started researching ways to communicate with spirits. One evening, Emily gathered her courage and returned to the morgue. She brought a candle, a notepad, and a pen. The morgue was just as cold and eerie as she remembered. She lit the candle and placed it on a table, its flickering light casting shadows on the walls. She sat down and took deep breaths to calm herself. "Mrs. Williams, Clara, if you can hear me, please let me know what you need," she whispered. For a moment, there was only silence. Then, the air grew colder, and the whispering began again. Emily listened closely, trying to understand the words. The whispers were soft and broken, but she caught pieces. Accident, together, peace. Emily wrote down what she heard, trying to piece together the message. It seemed that Mrs. Williams and Clara wanted to be together and find peace. Emily felt a deep sadness for them. They were lost, unable to find each other in death. Emily decided to seek help from our hero from the previous story, Aziz, the imam of the local mosque. Aziz listened to Emily's story and agreed to visit the hospital. And as usual, Aziz dragged me with him to the morgue. On that fateful night, Emily, Aziz, and I entered the morgue. The air was thick with anticipation. Aziz stood in the middle of the room. He told Emily to remain calm and do not feel afraid. Mrs. Williams, Clara, come here. Both of you already knew me. It's Uncle Aziz, with his fluffy beard. Aziz started the conversation. The temperature in the room dropped sharply, and the whispers grew louder. Emily felt a presence around them, an energy filled with emotion. Aziz closed his eyes before he smiled. Sometimes the souls will get stuck between Earth and the afterlife. Those with unfulfilled wishes and surrounded by guilt and despair, they will end up roaming as sad ghosts and vengeful spirits. Emily's heart ached for the spirits. What can we do to help them? She asked. Do you still keep something that belonged to them? Aziz asked, looking at Emily. Emily remembered the locket Mrs. Williams had worn. It was in the hospital's lost and found. The locket had a picture of Clara inside. Maybe it could help. The next day, Emily retrieved the locket and returned to the morgue. She placed it on the table where she had spoken to the spirits. Mrs. Williams, Clara, this locket belongs to you. May it guide you to each other and bring you peace, she said softly. That night, Emily dreamt of Mrs. Williams and Clara. In her dream, they were reunited, their faces filled with joy. They held each other tightly, their spirits glowing with a warm light. Emily woke up with tears in her eyes, feeling a sense of peace. From that day on, the whispers in the morgue stopped. The cold drafts and shadowy figures disappeared. The staff noticed the change and believed the spirits had finally found peace. Emily continued her work at St. Vincent's, changed by her experience. She knew that the dead had stories to tell, and sometimes needed help to find their way. The story of the haunted morgue became a legend, a tale of sorrow, courage, and the strong bond between a mother and her child. Years later, Emily retired from nursing. She often thought about Mrs. Williams and Clara, hoping they had found peace. One winter evening, as she sat by her fireplace, she felt a gentle, familiar chill. A soft whisper reached her ears, filled with gratitude. She smiled, knowing that Mrs. Williams and Clara were together at last, their spirits forever joined. The story of the haunting in St. Vincent's morgue was passed down through generations. It reminded everyone that love endures, even in death. The hospital continued to stand, a guardian of life and death, its walls holding the memories of countless souls. And deep below, in the once cold morgue, the spirits rested peacefully, their whispers a distant echo of a love that never dies. As for Aziz and I, we kept on doing our daily job until we get the chance to experience another interesting paranormal stuffs. If you enjoyed the story, you can support me more by subscribing to this channel. Your support will help me to gather more stories like this from any places I travel to. Until then, stay safe. May the blessings of God be with you.